Hello wonderful people, it's Wild here. Today I'll be showing you 5 ideas to create pathways for your build and giving you some tips and tricks so you can customize these designs to create your own pathways to elevate your builds. This first path, which perfectly fits a desert setting, uses sand-colored blocks, including birch stripped logs, planks, as well as dirt paths and some sandstone. For this build, I want to create a meandering look which goes off through the desert, where the edges of the path blend in with the desert sands. You could perhaps use this connecting between 2 builds or as the pathway in your town. And you can see I'm randomizing the texture as I go, creating some dimension with some slabs along the pathway, as well as some buttons, which you can see here, as well as some pressure plates. This simple texture is really effective in defining where the path is. And I've also defined the path by surrounding it with some oak fences with some lanterns, which provide some light for the build. And it's just as important as the path itself to consider the setting. So, since this is a desert path, I've surrounded it with some cactuses, sand dunes, and dead bushes. A good tip for making an attractive path in any style is to keep the block pallets small. This makes the whole path tie together. For this next pathway style, I'm using terracotta brick colored blocks. So I've got terracotta, bricks, granite, polished granite, and rooted dirt. And the idea here is to randomize the texture, but we're keeping the colors the same, similar to over here. This path, however, would work really well for a more formal build, perhaps something in an Edwardian style, or even in a fairy style build. And you can see as I'm placing in my blocks that I have surrounded it with a hedge. This formal style hedge and fencing works really well with this pathway, and I've included textural height by going up and down over little slopes, and I even have a small gate at the end. The contrast of the cool coloured walls works really well with the pathway. Another good tip when thinking about your pathways is to think about how you're going to end them. For a formal build, ending with a gate like this is a great option. This next pathway is created simply with coarse dirt, rooted dirt, and dirt paths, but with the details it has plenty of character and would be great for a medieval style build. For this style of pathway, I like to use mainly the dirt path blocks themselves, and then mix in the rooted dirt and coarse dirt to make it look like the path has been worn in over time. The path blocks also add some texture as they're slightly lower than the other blocks. Then you can go in with some stone buttons and grass to give an extra worn-in look, and the stones look like you could kick them along the pathway as you walk. Here I've used some simple overhead lighting, which adds ambiance to the space, and then I've used some azalea bushes to create some little topiaries. The rocks flanking either side of the path are another great touch, and they really direct your eye along the walkway. My next tip for creating good pathways is to consider scale. A 3-way path like this would work perfectly for a farming house, but not so much for a large town. You could easily adapt this design, however, to fit any scale, and I like to stick to multiples of 3, 5, or 7 for my paths. This next path design uses a fairly neutral color palette of greys, so it could work really well for any style, but you can see here I've decorated it in a Japanese style with a torii gate and some bamboo. To create depth along the sides, I'm using some stairs in stone and stone brick stairs, and I'm just placing these in a random pattern, and then I'm using a mixture of tough, polished and non-polished andesite, stone, and stone bricks. Try experimenting with different quantities of each to achieve a different look. My next tip for creating great paths is to include architectural features. This could be a bridge, some archways, or a torii gate like I've got here. This pathway uses jungle woods to create a suspension bridge type of walkway over water. To create it, I've made some posts sticking out of the water and I've spaced them 7 apart. And then I'm just using some jungle slabs to create curving sections throughout each of the spaced posts. This is a 2 wide pathway, but you can see it goes 3 wide as it goes around a bend. Once I've got my slabs in, I'm going in with some jungle trapdoors to add in a little bit of higgledy-piggledy railing, as well as some texture to the bridge itself. You can see for this pathway, lighting and greenery are key. I've used some pot plants on some posts as we go along. I've draped leaves over some of the lighting, and I've got some vines growing up the posts. I've also considered the waterway as well, so I've placed some stones, lily pads and drip leaves. If you wanted to create a different look with a similar sort of bridge, you could have this as a suspension bridge through the sky or perhaps over a valley by just not having water and some higher pillars. Another great tip when creating pathways is to consider elevation. Walkways like this, which go over water or around tree canopies, really add a viewing point to the build. You could adapt this particular jungle design to suit any style of build simply by replacing the wood with other types of wood. So now you have some ideas to go on and create some beautiful paths of your own. Please consider subscribing for more build tips, tricks and tutorials, and check out my Patreon to support me further. See you in another video!